Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. By the next morning, 2 explosive rumors about me had already spread like wildfire. The first said that I, a nobody from the lowest tier of the entertainment industry, had gotten pregnant on purpose and used the child to climb the social ladder, forcing the second young master of the Shangangja group, Ryan Fong, to marry me. The second claimed that my husband, Ryan, had once made a grand and passionate confession to top-tier actress Kayla Schuer. The moment the news broke, I became the punchline of every joke. People called me a tacky, low-class gold digger who had seduced Ryan just to marry into the prestigious Fong family. They said I had brought nothing to the table, contributed nothing to their business, and only stirred up trouble in the Fong household. So, even though I was legally Ryan's wife, the second piece of gossip sparked a renewed obsession with the Ryan-Kayla ship. Didn't he confess to Kayla before she even debuted? Wasn't she just a trainee back then? Classic grooming story. Kayla's endorsement of the Fong family jewelry line brought their sales through the roof, didn't it? Ryan must be blind. How could he give up Kayla for someone like me? It was ridiculous. My family, the Ye family, and the Fangs had formed a powerful alliance. And yet, people credited a rookie idol for a rise in sales that came from years of collaboration. I didn't know how many of those comments were posted by paid bots hired by Kayla's team to promote her new movie. But I did know one thing. Changa Group had deep control over the media. All of this wasn't just happening randomly. It could only be the result of Ryan's silent approval, or worse, his intentional push. He'd told me our first meal after the wedding had to be shared at home. Right before he left, he kissed my forehead and said, "Be good and wait for me at home. I'll bring you roses." The dinner I'd prepared, sweet and sour fish, the dish he'd begged me to make just yesterday, was reheated again and again. I'd been so confident when I put on the apron, but it still took me 3 tries to finally get it right. I sat at the table from afternoon until well past midnight, waiting, but the roses never came. All I got was the TV blaring a news segment on how Ryan once splurged extravagantly on Kayla. Custom-made luxury performance outfits, a dance crew that charged a fortune, even a reality show he invested in just to feature her. The program was filled with clips that wove together our bizarre love triangle and highlighted our marriage. A marriage that was never taken seriously by the public. Then I heard a burst of noise outside the window. It was over in a flash, but I'd seen it. The glint of a camera lens, poorly hidden of course. The Fong family was one of the top elite families in the city. The paparazzi had long caught wind of this and came for one thing: to capture me, the pitiful Mrs. Fong, in my most pathetic state. At exactly 11 p.m., there was finally a knock at the door. My heart lifted. I softened my brow and rushed to open it with hope, only to find Ryan's assistant standing there with a divorce agreement in hand. As if afraid I might not agree, he handed over a check for 60 million yuan. Just then, the TV conveniently chimed in with a fresh headline. Rising top star Ka Shooter spotted checking into a luxury hotel under Chana Group, sweetly accompanied by second young master Ryan Fong. I looked up and took the thick envelope. My cheeks were already soaked with tears. The assistant looked awkward and clearly didn't know how to comfort me. I mustered all my strength and quietly closed the door in his face. That same assistant, ironically, was someone I'd introduced to Ryan. Through the wooden door, I heard his gentle voice. "Mrs. Fong, you and Mr. Fong have been together for so many years. Everyone at the company really respects you. Maybe you two can still talk things out." "Thank you. I'm okay," I said. The wind stirred the curtains, then lifted strands of my hair. I covered my face and broke down crying. My Ye family might not be as powerful as the Fangs, but we were never the kind of small-time clan that needed to use a baby to secure a marriage. First, they accused me of using pregnancy to force the marriage. Then they brought in paparazzi to record my private life. Ryan really had the nerve to indulge his little mistress while letting me take all the hits. I must have looked terrible on camera, panicked, stumbling backward, helpless, finally collapsing before I pulled the curtain shut in one desperate motion. It was dangerous. My acting really wasn't good enough. I almost ran out of fake tears. The headlines about my humiliation at home were released that very night. By early the next morning, The Fong family elders had already come to my parents' home to apologize. Later that same morning, Ryan was dragged back to our marital home by his older brother, Adam Fong. Along with him came the lease contracts for several storefronts I'd had my eye on the past few days. My sister-in-law, Adam said with sincerity. The netizens just don't know the full story. It's easy for the public to be manipulated. We didn't manage public opinion well. I'm truly sorry. You know how these celebrities love to stir up drama, but it's all in the past now. Don't let it affect your future with Ryan. It's only the first day after your wedding. Old scandals and fresh headlines filled every corner of the internet. Even though Adam Fong clearly found the whole thing entertaining, deep down he still couldn't save face. After muttering a few half-hearted words of comfort, he quickly made his escape. I politely walked him to the door, then went into the kitchen right around lunchtime to make myself some soup dumplings. Ryan was sitting alone on the couch. I didn't spare him a single glance. He frowned, looking thoroughly annoyed, as if he wasn't the one who had cheated. I didn't avoid coming home last night on purpose, he began. Kayla was terrified when that story suddenly broke. You know, she's just starting to gain a little recognition. She's scared to death of this kind of publicity. Wanting a divorce was my decision. There's nothing between us now. Don't take it out on her. While he went on and on defending her, taking all the blame onto himself, I quietly focused on getting the flour-to-water ratio right in the dough. When I didn't respond for a long time, Ryan's temper finally cracked. He slammed a teacup down in frustration. Is 60 million not enough for you? If you have demands, just say them, okay? As long as you let me go. My hands froze mid-need. There was still a dull pain in my chest. Ryan and I had been childhood sweethearts for 10 years. 10 years of knowing and staying beside each other. Just 2 days ago, we had exchanged wedding rings at the altar. We'd sworn only death could part us. He slid the diamond ring onto my finger, tears blurring his vows so badly, he couldn't finish reciting them. But yesterday, after he left the house, it was like he'd become a completely different person. He suddenly called me out of the blue. His voice held no love, no warmth, only deep fatigue. He said he'd tripped and fallen, and somehow remembered everything from a past life. In that past life, he'd followed his family's wishes and married me. But when his company fell into crisis, I, with no regard for our marriage, turned to someone else. During his lowest point, it was Kayla who stayed by his side. And when he made his comeback, I, unwilling to let go, refused to sell my shares at a low price, which led to a hostile takeover. The company's cash flow collapsed and I fled overseas. His white moonlight, Kayla, ended up pushed down the stairs by creditors and died. In his version of the story, I was the toxic villain who did nothing but harm, and Kayla was the pure love of his life, the one that got away. Maybe I died so tragically in that past life that even the heavens couldn't bear it. So they gave me a second chance. I've already lived a whole lifetime with you, he said. This time I want to live for myself. It was as if he was afraid I wouldn't believe him. He insisted on proving it by predicting the future. He said, for example, that on the night of our wedding, I'd try to make sweet and sour fish and fail twice, even injuring my pinky finger with a fishbone. He said Adam would offer to hand over several storefronts in the west of the city as compensation, properties I'd had my eyes on for ages but couldn't acquire. He said I'd eventually meet someone after marriage who would move my heart, that I would cheat, that it was inevitable. Compared to his desperate certainty, I remained silent. So silent it made him uneasy. The truth was I didn't doubt him because I had been reborn too, memories and all. Only now did I realize that in order to save his company, I had gone to beg a former close friend for help. Just because that friend happened to be a man, Ryan saw it as me falling into someone else's arms. Only now did I realize that in my efforts to maintain cash flow and attract investment, my actions to revive the business were seen by him as me selling the company at a loss. I finally understood. All those times I traveled overseas, exhausted, trying to secure deals, just hoping to hear him say happy birthday over the phone, he wasn't too busy to answer. He just hung up because he was busy making another woman smile. What broke me wasn't just that he wanted to leave me. It was the unwavering conviction in his decision. As if the 10 years of growing up and struggling together meant absolutely nothing. What crushed me was that after chasing me relentlessly for a decade, he now claimed marrying me had only been the result of family pressure. And as for Kayla, the one who had supposedly died being pushed down the stairs, I remembered clearly. It happened right after I caught them cheating. To avoid responsibility, Ryan shoved her himself. She died on the spot. I slammed the dough hard against the counter, then wiped my hands clean and said lightly, "Bring the agreement over. I'll file the paperwork this afternoon." That worked for you. Maybe he hadn't expected me to agree so quickly and cleanly, because Ryan looked strangely unsettled, almost annoyed. It was like he wanted to say something, but before the words could leave his mouth, his phone started ringing. He glanced at the caller ID, then picked it up in a hurry. A woman's voice echoed between us. "I really didn't want to bother you again, but I thought you had the right to know. I'm pregnant." Pregnant? So soon. So that's how early Ryan and Kayla had gotten tangled up. I had thought Ryan began drifting away only when the company ran into trouble. During that half year, I was stationed in Singapore. By then, we had been married for 2 years, and I was just starting to find my footing at Fong Group. Plenty of employees were trying to get close to me, and I heard plenty of whispers. But no matter how I tested him, directly or subtly, Ryan had always handled it flawlessly. Once, there were paparazzi photos of the two of them being overly friendly. Before I even heard the gossip, Ryan had already shown up at my apartment. Even across the years, I could still remember the look of tension on his face, the sweat beading on the tip of his nose. She's a spokesperson recommended by the director. Who knows what tricks she pulled to get the job? She even bought off paparazzi to get staged photos, trying to ride on my name. I was so scared you'd misunderstand. He had come in such a rush without even bringing a suitcase, but he'd still remembered to buy a bouquet of champagne roses from the flower shop downstairs. At the time, the Fong family was already caught in resource battles between the two brothers, but they were still far more powerful than the Ye family. Ryan had no reason to lie to me. At least that's what I kept telling myself. I chose to overlook the fact that while he constantly belittled Kayla with his words, he still appointed her as the sole spokesperson for Fong Jewelry. His perfect act, consistent and devoted over 10 years, was too beautiful. It made me cover my ears and bury my head in the sand. And I forgot. Some men are born with their rotten instincts deeply rooted. If he hadn't encouraged it, how would my inbox have been flooded with so many ambiguous, taunting photos? Not every single one could have been a misunderstanding. He had loved me once. That part was true. But the part where he couldn't resist cheating, that was true too. A wave of nausea rolled through me, as if I were going to throw up. I could still hear Kayla's syrupy, overly dramatic voice through the phone speaker, her fake sweetness barely masking her smugness. He had just painted her as a fragile little victim. And the next second, that so-called innocent flower was announcing a pregnancy with his child. Ryan looked thoroughly embarrassed but still tried to comfort her gently. His words were soft and reassuring, and eventually, she was moved to tears on the other end of the line. "Seriously, we've only been married for 1 day, and you've already gotten your mistress pregnant." I gave a cold, mocking smile as I watched Ryan sitting awkwardly on the couch. He still tried to explain on Kayla's behalf. "She's not the mistress. I'll officially be with her after the divorce. And besides, what does it matter? We'd already decided to separate before I knew about the pregnancy, right? So, as long as you break up before you get caught cheating, it's not considered cheating." What a load of garbage logic. Maybe after everything he'd been through in a past life, Ryan now saw himself as the powerful CEO of Fong Group, not just the second son locked in a family power struggle. He no longer cared about saving face for the Ye family, and he had stopped hiding his little lover. His open favoritism gave Kayla all the confidence in the world to act out boldly. I stared at the ultrasound image sent to my phone from an unfamiliar number. I was thankful I hadn't accepted that stranger's friend request last night. You can delete a message on WeChat, but once it's been sent, you can't take it back. And now I had solid evidence of Kayla's pregnancy. In front of Ryan, I quietly signed the divorce agreement. His eyes lit up with mild surprise as I chose the liquid assets worth less than the shares I would have taken as part of the settlement. Just before leaving, I accepted the check he gave me. "Consider it a souvenir from our 10-year relationship." Ryan got to keep his shares, walked away with the better end of the deal, and still had the nerve to act gracious. "We can still be friends," he said. I slammed the door shut and didn't respond. There's no way I believe that just having some scraps of memory will help him prevent the Fong Group's future financial collapse. I believe that an idiot, even if reborn 100 times, will still be an idiot. There's no need for a nearly bankrupt ex-husband to remain in my circle. The marriage ended quickly, cleanly, and without fanfare. Although Ryan and I had fallen in love freely, our marriage had still carefully considered both families, and we'd signed a prenuptial agreement in advance. Now, in his rush to begin his shiny new life, Ryan handed me 60 million yuan just like that. And to protect Kayla, he even offered up real estate in the city center worth tens of millions. That ultrasound photo, I sent it straight to the Fong family elders. On the other end, I could practically hear them grinding their teeth as they spit out every single investment project the Ye family had initially given them. This deal didn't cost me. I got out of it just fine. But clearly, not everyone saw it that way. After all, word had already spread across the entire Jiangchong business circle that the daughter of the Ye family got cheated on the day after her wedding. And the abrupt dramatic divorce that followed didn't help. My reputation had definitely taken a hit. At the 25th anniversary celebration of the Jiangchong Chamber of Commerce, my sister looped her arm through mine. "You're really not going?" she asked. "That little actress is determined to make a scene tonight. Everyone's already talking about it." Ryan ignored the family's backlash and insisted like a man possessed on bringing cow with him. "It's like he's stomping all over your face again." At that moment, I was dragging a suitcase behind me, hair tied up high, boarding pass in hand, ready to fly to Singapore. I might have been foolish before, but I was never poor. Even in my last life, when I was head over heels for that man, I still built up international business deals in Singapore that were the envy of the industry. Now that the man was gone, I could finally refocus. It was time to build something of my own. This time I was going to start my own company. The moment I landed, I contacted a real estate agent and went straight to District 10, the top school district in Singapore, dragging my suitcase behind me. I didn't care what the asking price was. I had to secure a property there no matter what. Anthony Anson entered the Hong Kong finance world over a decade ago and was poached by a major American firm during the venture capital boom. Years ago, a fund under his name had invested in over a dozen brands, all of which successfully went public on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. But after moving to the US, he didn't make much of a splash. Last year, he announced his exit from high-rise capital and returned to Asia. What nobody else knew except me was that he had already decided to settle down in Singapore and was currently house hunting for his youngest son's school placement. The last time I met him, he had already climbed his way back to the top and was managing a billion-dollar Singaporean private equity firm. Back then, I had spent a fortune and burned every connection I had just to get a meeting with him. But in this life, proximity was my advantage, and I intended to claim that advantage early. When I returned to the hotel, flushed with energy, my sister's calls came in one after another. Why didn't we realize sooner how disgusting the Fong family could be? He finds a mistress and still wants to act like he's a loyal man. These days, for any man with a bit of status, being devoted to his wife has become a fashionable label. Look at some of those Hong Kong tycoons. Maybe Ryan's just trying to win some PR points in that lane too. I heard that Kayla Shu was playing coy. Among all the mistresses who've been publicly acknowledged by wealthy families, she was taking the route of professionalism and independence. She didn't respond directly to Ryan's public gestures of affection. Instead, she became a performance guest at the celebration thanks to his arrangements. It was as if she were using this method to quietly signal her stance. Kaisha wasn't some social climbing little flower, nor the mistress who ruined someone's marriage, but rather a legitimate, openly invited performer. To that, my only comment was, the more you try to cover it up, the more obvious it becomes. My sister said that after the performance, Ryan walked up to Kayla with a bouquet of roses and, in a gesture that allowed no room for rejection, pulled her into his arms. His eyes lingered on her belly, full of tenderness. My poor sister had to sit there listening to the endless stream of compliments flowing in their direction, knowing full well that tomorrow the media would probably dig me up as the disgraced ex-wife, just to make the contrast even more dramatic. Furious, she called the driver and left the venue on the spot. "What are you so mad about?" I asked, smiling. "My baby's about to be born too." She stared at me, surprised. Right then, fireworks exploded outside the window. "What?" she gasped. "You didn't go do something crazy, did you?" Across the video call, I lifted my glass and waved it at her. "The night market fund I'm building in Singapore. It's my precious baby. Will be officially licensed in about 6 months. And I believe the fund manager I hired, Anson, is going to deliver outstanding returns. This time 5 years earlier than the last." Back in my previous life, at the height of Ryan's venture capital success, he proposed to Kayla. He even live-streamed the entire proposal on Weibo. Her belly was already clearly showing. He posted photos of a giant diamond ring on her finger. She was, after all, the official spokesperson for Fong Jewelry. The proposal turned into a wildly successful marketing campaign, and even made Ryan's mother admit Kayla had commercial value. I remember before our wedding, I had once joked with Ryan about becoming the face of the brand myself. I had even designed how I wanted the wedding showcase to look. And what did Ryan say back then? "Entertainment is fine for fun," he replied. "But if you really got famous from this, my mom couldn't take it. You know how the older generation is. They think the entertainment industry is trashy and not respectable. You see that so-called mismatch in family background, the so-called class divide, the generational gap in thinking. As long as Ryan benefited from it, everything could be resolved. Really, love and indifference always leave traces." I didn't spend any more time dwelling on heartbreak or regrets. Instead, I picked up my suitcase and began my long-term life abroad, quietly fading from other people's view. At the same time, Ryan took Kayla Shu around to visit every single mutual friend we used to share. I saw a photo of them on a camping trip pop up in someone's social media feed. I gave it a like, and within seconds, the post vanished. After that, none of them ever messaged me again. Was I being iced out? Ryan and I didn't end things gracefully, but it wasn't an ugly breakup either. Still, somehow it felt like we were back in school and people were picking sides like kids. I set my phone down and shut my eyes tightly, but the buzzing startled me awake. Ryan was calling. My ex-husband, persistent as ever, calling again like he had some mark on his soul that couldn't be erased. Just as I answered, Angel walked past my office door and handed me a cup of coffee. "Got a minute?" I looked down at my phone again, but the call had already ended, just 5 seconds on the screen. Then the texts came one after another. "You really haven't changed at all. I'm so disappointed in you. Do you know I was actually thinking of giving you another chance? My parents are about to hand over their company shares to me. Don't expect me to ever accept you again." I tapped out a single line in reply, and then blocked his number. "Mr. Fong, show some respect. Being the other woman might be Kayla's thing. It's never been mine." When I looked up again, I was met with earnest and sincere eyes. "Miss Ye, I still want to thank you again. Thank you for trusting me." "No need to thank me," I said, smiling. "Maybe it's fate. How's your child doing lately? Thanks to you, everything's going smoothly." A man I once spent everything, time, connections, money, just to meet once now looked at me with gratitude and called me Mississippi. I used the excuse of no longer needing a school district home post-divorce to sell him the house for less than market value. I even recommended his son to the best international school in the city. In return, he agreed to become the fund manager for my new private equity firm. In our past lives, Anson had essentially started over from scratch in Singapore. It took him just 5 years to raise $10 billion in capital. This time around, with my sizable early investment and a fully established team, the process would be even faster. Ryan used his memories from his past life to sidestep a few business traps. And maybe the flattery from those around him gave him the illusion that I, his ex-wife, was out there feeling sorry for myself, just waiting for a chance to beg him to come back. He never imagined I'd already grown my new venture to a scale dozens of times larger than in my past life. Ryan said he was thinking of giving me another chance. But did I look like I wanted it? After that, he didn't try to contact me again. His business moves became increasingly bold. using every ounce of past life knowledge to his advantage. He quickly roped in the same relatives who had supported him before, flipping a bunch of fence-sitters to his side. Middle management made massive cuts in labor costs, and cash started flowing like a river. His wealth-building plan was in motion. Some people did question his aggressive tactics. With half the project managers gone, who would handle downstream sales and operations? In response, he arrogantly announced a strategic overhaul, cutting back on jewelry design and tech talent, and launching his own investment firm. Maybe after seeing how I had saved the company in the previous life, he finally realized that making money by investing money was the fastest route. Now he wanted a piece of the finance world too. And with his memories of future trends in companies that would rise, it would be easy for him to predict which investments would pay off. Over the last 6 months, he had personally blocked several so-called promising strategic investments, choosing instead to sit on a pile of idle cash, waiting for the right equity targets. When the board expressed concern on behalf of the shareholders, he boldly guaranteed that his new investment company would generate at least 60% of the group's current total profits within 5 years. That promise was too tempting. Opposition quieted almost immediately at the table. He argued his case confidently, never backing down. This year, the market was flooded with overly optimistic forecasts. If the company actually increased its investment ratios, next year they might not even have enough liquid funds to cover financing costs. Given such high risks, why not park the money in more stable financial products? If the market tanked, safe haven assets like gold or the yen could still save them. The irony was staggering. These were the same risk management strategies I once suggested when I worked for the Fong family, telling him to save bullets before a storm hit. Clearly he remembered. But he seemed to forget one thing. Risk was never the enemy. Returns always come with risk. They rise together and they fall together. In his past life, Ryan's company had nearly collapsed under the weight of excessive risk. But in this life, he overcorrected, becoming so cautious that he gave up any potential for profit. To outsiders, his caution soon looked like nothing more than cowardice and incompetence. Day after day, all he did was sell dreams to the board and staff. He'd been doing it for 6 straight months. But 2 quarters in, during a company performance review, it was pointed out that Fong Group had failed to meet expectations for 2 quarters in a row. While most of their competitors were expanding, they'd stalled completely and were even operating at a loss. And just like that, they didn't have to wait for a real crisis. The board members were already sharpening their knives. During this time, his older brother, Adam Fong, had quietly hired a top consulting firm to investigate every single investment opportunity that Ryan had rejected. It took only 6 months for Ryan to publicly embarrass himself in front of the entire group. Midway through his report, the board launched into open criticism. His so-called investment strategy had gone half a year with no results. Huge sums of capital had been poured in, and yet not even an echo of return. Worse still, they were paying 1% management fees to outside agencies. Ryan didn't even try to explain. Out of spite, he declared that he would show them all what he was really capable of. Then he dumped every last cent of company funds into a mediocre private equity fund. But this time, even the board panicked. Even a child knows you don't put all your eggs in one basket. This fund will be the next dark horse. It'll multiply in value within the next 2 years, he said over and over, swearing with full confidence. I looked into that fund. It had no past track record, but in the future, yes, in the next life, it would indeed invest in a booming industry. The small companies it backed would go public in the US and Hong Kong markets, multiplying their value by more than 10-fold. And yes, maybe 2 years from now, Ryan could have pulled off a stunning reversal. But unfortunately for him, shareholders care about consistency. No one was willing to sit around for 2 years with no complaints, especially after already watching the company's assets shrink for the last 6 months. Several of the older board members had always favored Adam. Anyway, now watching Ryan's chaotic, unstructured investment behavior, their criticisms grew sharper by the day. I heard that Ryan went home that night and took out all his frustration on Kayla's shoe. The little starlet, who had been pampered like a princess, finally snapped and stormed off, pregnant belly and all. She even posted on social media, "If no one invites me home, Then I won't come back. Over tea, I casually shared the story with my sister. She laughed so hard her shoulders were shaking. How do you know all the details? Do you have a spy under their bed? One of my clients told me. I said, sipping my tea. I saved him a ton of money on his deal, and he had a few too many drinks. Couldn't stop talking. Your client, who was it? Adam Fong. My fund received government subsidies plus tax and management fee incentives. Adam didn't hesitate for a second before signing the deal. That's the kind of cheap fake loyalty their family shares. Toss a couple stacks of cash in the air, and they'll scatter like pigeons. I heard Kayla flew to Japan by herself and gave birth there. Ryan stayed behind in China, too overwhelmed to go get her. No matter how adored she once was in his eyes, she was never more than a caged canary. And now Ryan was too busy fighting fires to preen her feathers. He was starting to panic because the nightmare from his past life was unfolding all over again. Despite avoiding countless pitfalls using his memories, the company was once again facing a financial crisis. Blinded by his illusion of control, he had foolishly shut down all the divisions he thought were inefficient. He didn't realize that investing is a long and volatile road. It's never just a steady climb upward. Without proper oversight and risk management, older projects began to crumble. Issues that never surfaced in the past life were now emerging one after another. Lawsuits, penalty fees, maintenance costs, labor fees, money flowing out like water. Before long, the company's cash flow was strained to its limit again. How is there no money? He barked. Didn't we suspend all those projects? Eventually, the CFO had enough. He handed in his resignation and threw the letter in Ryan's face. You want to know why we're broke? I told you we needed controls, and you didn't listen. Penalty fees aren't money to you, you idiot. Ryan was blindly relying on past life memories, but he had no ability to adapt to changes. The butterfly effect was already crashing into him like a hurricane, and he still insisted everything was fine. Those projects were doomed to blow up eventually. I was right to breach the contracts. Adam Fong wouldn't be celebrating for long. If Ryan wanted them, he could have them all. But the projects didn't even need to implode. Before that could happen, the board's fury brought down the final blow. If the money couldn't be recovered, Ryan could start preparing for his complete exit. In this life, he could forget about ever earning a single share of the group's holdings. To keep his position in the company, he had no choice, even though it made him sick inside, but to begin pulling money out of the fund. But private equity funds aren't like stocks in the public market that anyone can sell off whenever they want. To exit, you need to find buyers one at a time through intermediaries. By then, the macroeconomic climate had already begun to show signs of fatigue. Everyone was clutching their cash tightly, cautious to the extreme. Ryan's so-called golden investment was still unrecognized by the market. And in the current environment, it was no different from holding a handful of garbage. There was only one outcome waiting for him: selling everything off at a steep loss. I made a point of bringing Anthony back to China with me to complete the equity acquisition, and conveniently suggested he bring his family along during the summer break. When Ryan walked into the private dining room arranged by his secretary, and saw me sitting at the head of the table, his entire face froze. Anani's daughter was a sweet little girl, bright, kind, and curious. When she saw the color drain from Ryan's face, she tilted her head and asked with concern, "Mister, are you okay? If something's bothering you, you can talk about it." Of course, something was bothering him. In our past life, I had practically bent over backward just to get an audience with Anthony after he'd already made a name for himself. I even went to his daughter's school, donating supplies and giving speeches just to hand him my business card. Ryan had seen the tabloid photos and jumped to conclusions, assuming I was playing stepmom overseas for the sake of my career. I still remember the disgust in his eyes when he said, "That guy has already got 2 kids, and you're still throwing yourself at him for money. You really are willing to do anything." Well, surprise. Anthony and I are just colleagues. His wife, Angela, is a sharp, capable woman with a strong sense of loyalty. She's always appreciated the way I helped smooth things over for Anthony's work and their daughter's schooling. She knows a bit about my history with Ryan, and occasionally throws some well-placed jabs on my behalf. "Oh, our Monsieur really is a workaholic," she teased. "If not for this acquisition, I wouldn't even get a chance to have dinner with her. Mr. Fong, you sure were lucky once upon a time. As they joked, Ryan finally had to face the reality of how badly he'd misunderstood me. He couldn't even force a smile. For this acquisition, I even graciously took Ryan off my block list. You've been reborn too, haven't you? He asked. I want to talk. Maybe we really did have a lot of misunderstandings before. Can you give me a chance? I didn't realize he knew Anthony's wife too. He sat across the table explaining the assets he was trying to offload to the fund manager, but his eyes kept darting nervously in my direction. He looked completely unsettled. I gave him a polite smile and replied, "It's not your fault, really. When you think everything is dirty, of course, all women look dirty to you. But I'm here to make money, not to recycle trash." Before we arrived, I'd specifically instructed my team to push the valuation down to rock bottom. The final signing was scheduled to take place in the Fong Group's boardroom with the chairman in attendance. Ryan even came to me privately, almost begging, "You know this investment will succeed, don't you? Can't you please, for old time's sake, speak up for me in front of the chairman? You know, in 2 years, this will pay off. The projects Adam picked are definitely going to collapse." He offered me a list of tempting conditions, even trying to hand over the tiny bit of stock he hadn't been willing to split with me in the divorce. But with a company that had someone like him as the heir, that stock would be worth less than nothing. I pulled out the equity transfer agreement my lawyer had prepared weeks ago and gave it one last casual glance before saying, "Your brother's not going down." I helped him avoid half of those ticking time bombs. Let's just call it repayment for helping me tidy things up so neatly. Ryan's eyes went wide with shock. He opened his mouth but could barely squeeze out a few words. "Because of Kayla? Is it because you still have feelings for me?" Disgusting. I didn't answer. I pushed open the conference room door with my lawyer at my side. The Fong Group's board members didn't look too pleased when they saw me. All they could do was exchange a few polite words. In the end, I signed the contract while Ryan stared at me with what he probably thought were soulful eyes. But all I felt was a chill down my spine. After that business deal, Ryan started pestering me from time to time, as if he had completely forgotten that he still had a fiancé and a newborn child waiting for him in Japan. According to his brother, Adam, Kayla was recovering postpartum in Japan and spending money like water. Ryan himself was barely keeping things together and had no resources left to support her. Kayla, it seemed, was starting to lose patience. I kept that in mind and chose just the right moment to agree to meet Ryan again. When he showed up this time, all the charm and poise from before had completely vanished. The stubble on his chin and the dark shadows under his eyes were proof that things had not been going well for him. He looked utterly drained. The once proud and calculating expression on his face was now laced with something softer, something worn down. "Emily," he said, "I regret everything. I know you'll never forgive me, but I still want to tell you that back then, in our past life, you worked yourself to the bone for me. How could you have betrayed me? How could I have believed those stories? I wish I'd never been reborn. I wish I could have just stayed in that time when you still loved me. I really regret it." I lowered my head and pinched myself hard just to squeeze out a few tears. I'd always kept a strong front in front of him, so the moment he saw my tears, he panicked. He grabbed my hand. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Everything I've done, I deserve this. Kayla still has my investments under her name. 2 years from now, that money will multiply tenfold. Let's move to Europe together. Just the two of us. We can start over. There's still a chance for us." Before I sat down, I'd made sure to open the curtain wide. The breeze blowing in was thick with the heat of summer, drying the traces of tears at the corners of my eyes. Outside, behind a small tree and the hedges along the curb, the video camera was clearly visible. I pulled my hand back and said, voice trembling, "Of course you deserve this. Anyone who tramples on someone's heart deserves to be pierced 1,000 times." Saying that didn't bring me the calm I'd imagined it would, but the heavy weight that had been sitting on my chest for so long finally felt like it was gone. I had to admit, even after living another life, even when I pretended to be so composed, getting stabbed in the heart still hurt. The betrayal and humiliation from the last lifetime had been real. I picked up the glass of water from the table and flung it hard at the window behind him. It hit the floor with a loud shattering crash, drawing everyone's attention. "What the hell are you doing?" Keisha's face was pale from childbirth, but it twisted with fury. She collapsed onto the floor, cradling her newborn. "I gave birth to your child. And this is what I get. You go crawling back to your ex-wife like a damn dog. I flew back the moment I could. And this is how you greet me? Ryan Fong, you'll never get away with this." Behind her was a cluster of celebrity gossip reporters. Their audio recorders hung clearly around their necks. Those angry words would definitely make it into every major media outlet. When the news broke, online reactions exploded. Kayla was still part of the entertainment world, but after disappearing from the public eye for nearly 6 months due to her pregnancy, her fame had dropped off sharply. Worse yet, she'd clearly been the other woman. So this time, the internet wasn't so kind. Thankfully, the paparazzi, photographers, and PR team were all hired by me. The narrative online quickly shifted. Most of the backlash landed squarely on Ryan. The photos published online painted 3 portraits. A pitiful woman hounded by her ex-husband, a betrayed woman abandoned by the father of her child, and a shameless man who cheated and then wouldn't stop harassing his ex-wife. Ryan was still in charge of a jewelry product line under the Fong Group, a line where over 70% of the customers were women. His carefully crafted loving husband image had always been a marketing tool used to sell rings and necklaces. Now that people knew he was just a serial cheater, female consumers began fleeing the brand at a visible, alarming rate. Online outrage snowballed quickly. The higher Ryan had tried to climb in public opinion, the harder he fell. Ryan's competitors didn't even need my help. Once they saw an opening, they flooded the internet with sponsored posts and snarky memes through marketing accounts. It looked like the next 6 months would be a death sentence for Ryan's company's sales. I had acquired his fund shares, and just as he finally got some liquidity to stabilize his company's finances, he fell headfirst into a scandal. There wasn't even time to celebrate before everything blew up again. This time, there was no getting back in the game. Adam Fong was thoroughly satisfied with how I handled everything. Whenever he brought up Ryan, his face stayed cold. Just like back in our past life when he'd been the one to push Ryan out of the company. After being forced out, Ryan was sidelined into a dead-end department filled with employees who were basically just waiting to retire. No one gave him the slightest courtesy. The Fong family reclaimed the few shares Ryan had clung to, and even their parents stopped interfering when Adam started crushing him. Ryan had been fully abandoned by his family. After my public, humiliating divorce, I went abroad to build my own business, and the media caught wind of the whole thing. My personal brand and the Yi family's company skyrocketed in exposure, saving us millions in marketing costs. My sister was constantly swamped with work, but still made time to ask, "Did something hit you in the head? Why would you help that jerk, Ryan? And that woman, she's the definition of shameless. You should have let them crash and burn." She wanted me to let the public roast her until she couldn't show her face in the industry again. Articles pushed by my PR team ended with dramatic flair. Kayla Shu, betrayed, stood tall and declared she would no longer live like a canary trapped in a golden cage. She quit Fong Media in style. And her new boss? Me. I publicly welcomed her into a new company and declared that I'd support her comeback. Oh sister. The truth is Kayla ended up with Ryan because she followed my plan. How could I explain something as absurd as reincarnation? When I first woke up in this lifetime, it took me a long time to adjust to having my young, energetic body back. Before Ryan had even awakened to his past, Kayla had already come to find me. She said, "At 19, I hadn't known anything. He drugged me and took my body without consent. And yet I was the one left with a ruined reputation. I even knelt and begged him to let me leave the country and disappear forever. But he still forced me to get an abortion. He never once treated me like a human being." Now her youthful face held eyes that looked worn by time, filled with pain and vengeance. It made me realize something. We didn't have to be enemies. Heaven must have taken pity on me for wasting an entire lifetime, and gave me a second chance. This time she said, "I will protect my baby. Please, Missia, I have nothing left. If you help me get revenge, let me be your blade." And so it began. First, we leaked the story that Ryan had once pursued her. Then we made sure she kept showing up in places where he was. She was everywhere, so often that Ryan began to believe it was fate. He forgot that the assistant managing his schedule was someone I had personally recommended. She helped me destroy Ryan. I helped her pivot her career and keep her child. No more cages. No more being at the mercy of power. Oh, and by the way, Ryan still hadn't gotten around to transferring Kayla's fund shares. Half of those millions of dollars were conveniently listed under their son's name. The other half had quietly been moved into mine. Let's not tell Ryan just yet. He'll find out soon enough when he's thrown out of the Fong family with nowhere left to run.